You're all very welcome here to, would you believe that this is our 27th year of the Maria Edgeworth Festival, and you're very welcome here to our cultural night. I see Angela there. Angela's been involved with this for 27 years, and we've had some famous writers that we'll have some famous writers here tonight. So just some little housekeeping. There's an exit here, an emergency exit here and there, so just in case, hopefully you won't have to use it. This is our amazing weekend for us here in Edwardstown. This is our third night, and on the first night here we had a packed house with Requiem for Big House. It was a documentary made with the support of Longford County Council, and I suppose big houses are a relevance for us here in Edwardstown, as the Edgeworths live in the big house and no longer do. So every year we try to introduce something special, and tonight we introduce you to Simply Strings, and they will play 2 or 3 times during the night. So the format for tonight is we had a poetry competition, and the adjudicator was Noel Monahan, and Noel will announce the winners and give his adjudicator's comments, and that will be followed by some of Noel's readings. Then we'll have Simply Strings again, and then we'll have David Butler. We had a short story competition as well, which we had huge entries from all over the world for both our poetry and our short stories competition. And David Butler, a writer from Bray in County Wicklow, will announce the winners and give us adjudicators' comments. And it just goes to show you, I don't know how many years ago it was, nearly 20 years ago, David won the Maria Edgeworth short story competition, and he's back here now as an adjudicator. And then one of the highlights of the night, not just the highlight of the night, but one of the highlights of the night, with Sinead Hussey will be in conversation with Emily Pine, and that will be followed then, we'll close with Simply Strings again. So I now introduce you to Noel. And
good evening all. Delighted to be here. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, listen, I'm delighted and honoured to be invited to adjudicate the Maria Edgeworth Poetry Competition for 2023. This is a long established poetry award, like Matt has said. It is the event like this that raises the profile of poetry throughout the country and abroad. So it's a very important thing to happen, that you have poetry competitions and that they are available to aspiring poets and to established poets. You know, it's very important. Competitions and prizes, short listings, there's a lot of excitement associated with it. The winners announced at a gathering, specific gathering, just like this evening. And a photo opportunity, you know, for local paper or whatever, does help, and a publication, hopefully, of the winners, you know, in some literary journal. It really is about poetry having a day out, and it deserves that. And Poetry Ireland did organise that in April of 27. Right, we got the photographer there. The definition of poetry is never fixed, and we talked about that at the workshop today. You know, poetry is constantly changing. You don't define it. You know, you don't define art, you know, as such. You just be aware of the changes involved. Every generation renews our understanding of poetry. The changing dynamics of the English language and word farming. You'd like to call it word farming because I come from Granard, and I'm a son of a farmer, and the the weather was a bit like this, you'd be shaking hay, and then next thing the rain comes, and you say, what's the purpose of that? And then it would dry out, and then you start again. So there was a frustration. I left farming, by the way. I think poetry, I took up poetry instead. So I word farm now, as such. Now this year we had 374 entries. I checked with John and with Matt and Angela, and I think that's the greatest number of entries, and we're right there that we ever had. But one great thing about it was that the standard was exceptionally high. Now, you'd be expected to say that, but I really mean it. It was exceptionally high. And you'll see when the results come in and where they come, it's not just something that's happening locally. This is something that's happening internationally, all over. Maybe it's the new high-tech world that we belong to, but it's definitely, there's a very high standard. And it really, an event like this carries us out of the dark terrain of COVID-19. It's always a privilege to read another poet's work, and do so as its first reader. It's because usually a person writes a poem, they may show it to a friend or colleague, if you can get it, trust a colleague to look at your work, and then they send it out. So I often realise that I'm reading it for the first time, and that is a privilege. I'd like to share some of the poetic thoughts with you this evening before I announce the winners and the highly commended. Now you can imagine the subject matter was varied, and this is some of the subject matter. There were poems to take the reader on a journey through various landscapes and places, like Sheep's Head, West Cork, Clouds Flying on Achill, Hook House, Creslaw in Donegal. You can imagine after the disaster there, a lot of poems. Dove Cottage, Wordsworth's Country, Slieve on Earn. So lots of landscape and some very, very good poems on the whole notion of dinge, that folklore associated with a place. You could never guess really what was coming down the road, and that made the adjudication all that more exciting. Thought-provoking poems. The destructive reality of today's world, climate change, the Ukraine, encounters with despair, desolate internal terrain of the soul. Poets continue to give their feelings a public expression. That's a great thing to have. We had ekphrastic poems responding to works of art, in fact a lot of them this time. About to the business of announcing highly commended and prize winners. The highly commended had started first. Here we have three poems. Absence by Lucy Kavanagh. Is Lucy here today? No. All right. I start with the first line of the poem. There were lessons I missed in school. The opening line of that poem is fairly poignant. I was absent when they mentioned trauma. This poem in particular reminded me of Yeats's poem, A Dialogue of Self and Soul, from the Winding Stair collection in 1933. I quote, endure the toil of growing up, the ignominy of boyhood and distress, changing into man, the unfinished man and his pain, brought face to face with his own clumsiness. This was a very clever psychological poem that points in the direction of the shortcomings of our education system. Very deeply, and there was a lot of soul searching in the poem, and quite adept really, and very beautifully stated. I know Lucy Kavanagh is really from Mayo, I think, as far as I know. I can't be certain, and that she has published a lot of poems. One thing I want to say is that all the highly commended and all those who have won prizes are already established poets. Some of them have 6 and 7 books published, you know. So that's the standard that you're having today, you know, in these poetry competitions. The next highly commended poem is entitled After Rain, Awan Wale Dul by Etna Landon. And Etna's here, isn't she? Yeah, Etna. And I'll just say a few comments and you'll come up and read the poem. Will that be all right? After Rain. The poem has a great sense of light and images. The images are pristine. I quote, "The earth's secret flung wide and rippling, outer edges folded for miles over melted sand. The writing here is mature, with most effective usage of enjambment that run online," and we talked about that at the workshop today. There's great skills lately with enjambment, is where the line just doesn't end, such, but runs on to the next, or runs on to the next verse. That's a skill that I've seen develop over the last 4 or 5 years, especially in adjudication. So, can I ask you to come up, please?
I'm not quite as tall as Noel, but I'll do my best. Hello everyone, I'm delighted to be here today, and big thanks to Noel for placing my poem highly commended. Just to say a little bit about the poem, the second sort of subtitle is Aun Balladul, and that's the Irish for the river of Baldoyle. And I live in Malahide, which is along the northeast coast, and every day driving to work for the last 30 years I've driven past Baldoyle, and every morning the sun is different on this kind of marshy, swampy land. Aun is estuary. Balladul, it comes from Balla Dovgal, which is the town of the Dark Stranger. So it's a Danish kind of reference. It's the Scandinavian Vikings, basically. So just a little bit of history of the place. After rain, Awan Balladul. This riot of light after all night rain, and you wonder what to make of it. Kinetic flow and dazzle dog on wetlands, meniscus of marsh skin, rekindled and shone like darkened otter hide. The earth's secret pelt flung wide and rippling, outer edges folded for miles over melted sand. Along the lit surface, splinters of airborne light skive over shallow water. A wispy egret stops there, her needle-sharp focus unbroken. This sudden heat rising from silver-streaked mud, thin mediation, stretch-marked and triple-lined. And to the side, silhouette limbs of beech tree branches, ink scribbles bristling the sky, leftover rain, luminous now in the swamp's far pockets. You, alive again to this flurry of light hovering somewhere between flicker ignite and candle glow, where you momentarily delay, briefly inhabit the synaptic gap between motion and rest, a small bird's quick silvered wing, and the patient flow of the egret, slow rising into stillness.
The final highly commended poem is entitled Anna by Danny Dunn. This poem celebrates a famous mosaic in Mullingar Cathedral. I didn't know about this mosaic at all, you know, and I would have frequented Mullingar Cathedral a number of times, but I didn't know there's a famous mosaic there. Seemingly, Boris Anrep, who lived 1883 to 1969, his mosaic was commissioned for 1954, I think, for the Marian year around that time. And it was meant to be a portrait of Saint Anne in the Blessed Virgin, and actually the Russian artist took, it appears, some liberties, and he had at the back of his mind a lover, so it's a little bit of From Russia with Love. And for Saint Anne, he painted Akhmatova, a famous lady, Russian poet, and Akhmatova, really, or Akhmatova. Akhmatova, I think is what the pronunciation of it. And on it, they have Anna, the name Anna, which I think a lot of artists really do that, but because we don't know what Saint Anne looked like, there's the Virgin, I think, so he remembered it like of his lover. And she's a famous woman, she's worth reading, as such. So this poem really was by Danny Dunn from Mullingar, and Danny is here to read his work. So can I invite Danny to come up now, please?
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. I had a very enjoyable day, and thank you for the poetry workshop this morning. It was absolutely brilliant, And so it's a new awakening, I suppose, and delving into poetry. I am a writer of fiction as well, and a historian, and started in recent years delving into poetry, and this came down me. I was selected, I was just overwhelmed, and thank you very much for selecting me. So here's the poem, Anna. The poet and the artist paint pictures of love. Anna once loved him, and she wrote it all down, mosaics to him forever in words. Then he left her behind and came to the west. She stayed in her homeland to suffer great loss under Stalin. Her words lived on in the hearts of her people. Yet he didn't abandon her. Her name and face are forever etched on a cathedral mosaic. The mother of Mary presenting her daughter to the high priest. Mary later suffered the loss of her son on a cross. Anna had 4 crosses. Her son in the Gulag. The 3 men she loved, slain by a merciless tyrant. Her face in the mosaic was a secret for many years. Like Mary's sacrifice, knowing that someday her grandchild would die like her loved ones, drawn, nailed, and stretched on a tree. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And now I'll go to the prize winners. Third prize poem is entitled Kalinka on a Strovial, and it's by Glenn Wilson. As far as I don't think Glenn is coming, but I'm almost certain he has won prizes in Longford before, or in Cullen perhaps. I know he won in Cavan, in Cavan, different, I think, adjudicated twice. This is another established writer, and the Kalinka, well, it's magical. The musicians, and we had lovely music there. The Kalinka is a Russian folk song, and it starts very slowly, and you have choral work like the musicality won me over straight away, but it was about this busker, who was playing outside the office, I don't know, do you work in offices, but I'm sure they can have random places to work at times, and you'd only wish you'd have a busker outside who could play his instrument. And the strovio is a violin with some sort of a trumpet, attached, where you get a double sound, which is unusual. I had to look that up, That's good fun was, adjudicating. I don't go saying I know it all, so you have to do a lot of research when you see some words. Strovio I didn't know, I had to get that. So it was written by the Kalinka piece of music was written by an Ivan Larionov, and it was written in 1860, and the ending line was that when he played it, he couldn't play it badly if he tried. It's a very winning line at the very end. What's important in poetry is the opening lines and the finishing lines, and what goes on in between is another business, but you must open and draw in your reader, and then you must end, in something as fine as that. He couldn't play it badly if he tried. Okay, so and his prize will be sent forward to him later date. Second prize is a poem entitled The Poet's Way, and this is by Partridge Boswell. Partridge Boswell couldn't come today because he couldn't get a flight, or that he's in America, and he was born in New York, and he's been writing and publishing widely. So you can see now straight away that Maria Edgeworth Poetry Competition is very much the universal thing. We're talking about it here in County Longford, but it's happened in the world, in the world of poetry. That's very important. Sheep's Head, West Cork. A poem with a great sense of place. A poem illuminating the Din Shankas of that great, and a great sense of how landscape can talk to you if only you let it give it time to speak. That idea John Montague had about the landscape is a form of manuscript that we have forgotten how to read it. He was a great man on that idea of reading the landscape. Again, it was an incredible piece of skillful writing with enchantment. Again, it's a very much this year new style. And now I go to the first place, the poem entitled Matryoshka. You must, at this stage, you're probably thinking I'm on Russian now. I can't help it, the poems came in. These are the best poems. Matryoshka or Matroshka was by Partridge Boswell, the same writer. This is a poetry competition for the best poems. It's not saying, that's what if you can change the rules around if you want to and say, you can only have one prize. But, this person was writing at an incredible rate. The Matryoshka, you probably have them at home. The little wooden dolls that fit into one another.
Yes.
Oh, it's a lovely metaphor for poetry. Stanzas of poems fitting into one another, lines coming together with one another. So I said, look, this has to win because it's so powerful, it's so good. And, Matryoshka, I knew about the dolls, but I didn't know the word Matryoshka. So you have to check that out as well. Another ekphrastic poem depicting the art form of wooden dolls fitting into one another, a history, and in it was the history of a family inside one another. The mayor, his wife, and their flaxen boy with his mother's hair and his father's green eyes. So, in other words, poem was very much, imitating really the whole, the doll itself. So he got first prize, and I think he deserves that, So before I start reading some of my own work, I want to thank you all for listening to me, and thanks to Matt, John and Angela and all the committee for organising this great event. You must be very proud of yourself, because this is an international poetry and, I'm sure, short story competition. So now I'll read a few poems. That'll be all right, of my own. And I'm going to start with a poem. Well, a good, what maybe the poet adjudicating might do, advice to a young poet. That's the title of the poem, and it's a poem in memory of Tom McIntyre, the great Cavan playwright and poet. I want to draw him in as well. Advice to a young poet. Break the lock on the field gate. Avoid the muckworms at the gap. Abandon old visions you have of yourself. Self-pity in the face of a terrible God. The tribe of ghosts constantly shouting. Get to meet God's strange people living there. The silenced priest, the lost child. Stay in the field with its mysteries. Sift through the grass, the brown hair. Listen to the hills clapping hands. Crab apples dropping into the ditch. If you remain long enough, you'll feel the warmth of a candle burning inside you, the blur of its flame constantly changing. Your attention. Okay, I think we deserve to be taken somewhere else now, and I want to go to Marrakesh and take you there. It's a wonderful place. It just blew me over, the whole lot, the change of culture and the madness of it all, and the great fun, and the great new words that you get, in Marrakesh, and the language, and I felt it was all exciting. And really, it was this notion of Christianity and Islam coming together, and the religious rhythms. So I based this on what the tour guide was exceptional, Ali Ben. When you jump up in the bus and he'd tell all about his gardens and Marrakesh and all that kind. So I just read the poem after that. Marrakesh. A stork nests on top of a minaret. Berber houses wedge into the mountainside, juju bushes, goats climbing the almond trees. We are an inward people, says the tour guide, Ali Ben. Read, our internal garden is surrounded by walls. Winding streets tangle, array of goods in alleyways, barbouche, Mokala guns, semolina eyes, saffron, mint tea, tiny henna stars glittered on a young girl's fingers. We are an inward-looking people, intone the same chants at regular intervals, beat out rhythms on bender drums. Women in burqas talk on mobile phones. A young man with a newly purchased satellite dish between his legs prays outside the mosque. We are an inward people, says the tour guide Ali Ben. Read, our internal garden is surrounded by walls. Geometric motifs to lift your eyes, from ceramic tiles past plaster designs to cedar carvings. Symmetry is a central feature in everything we do. We are an inward-looking people. Intone the same chant at regular intervals, beat out rhythms on bender drums. Jamia El Fana Square is round the bend. Musicians, snake charmers, tooth pullers, water sellers, harira, tagine, and couscous smells. A man sleeps in the shade, unmoved by everything. We are an inward people, says the tour guide Ali Ben. Read our internal garden, surrounded by walls. We own the Casbahs by the dozen, have cats in kafgans and jalabas underneath chairs and tables of every restaurant and cafe. Look at the old man reciting the Quran from the trailer. We are an inward-looking people, intone the same chants at regular intervals, beat out rhythms on bender drums. We turn our cruciferious faces away from Mecca to face our own gardens. Eden, Gethsemane, while Ali Ben continues with his mantra. We are an inward people, real our internal garden, surrounded by walls. And I often think that, that internal garden, poetry is a type of internal garden, and such. And we have that. The Islam have their walls and all that, and we have ours too. We have our Edens. Gardens are always places that are meant to be peaceful and great harmony and lovely music. All right, so I think anyway. Right, thank you very much. I like Patrick Kavanagh a lot because, again, from a farming background, and I like in the scheme, and I like the writing of Patrick Kavanagh. And way back in 2004, I was asked to write a poem to commemorate, his work at the centenary. And I wrote this poem, and it was published in a literary magazine related to the Patrick Kavanagh centenary. Beyond the Wind. I can imagine him looking over a field gate, knowing the hour had arrived, wondering why everyone deserted him. Girls fell in love with the man in the moon. The mirror of a pothole points a finger to Inniskeen and to Golgotha. The drama of fields hurries to an end. Scourged by briars, hiding from the neighbours, he feared the Hosanna crowd on the hill, known to shout, "Hail, crucify!" Breath. Tired of the drop of mother's milk from the poncher, he saw another cup beyond the wind, happy to be alone with himself and to drink the silence and the dream. Okay? I should read 73. I was talking about writing a long poem, and I grew up in Granard. It's not really about Granard, I better cover my ground. It could be, The names are all changed anyway, and I very little money, so I don't want to end up on the steps. But Diary of a Town was really, it took me 15 years to write it, it's 40 pages, it's a long poem, and I enjoyed doing it. I used to write little images, or I'd hear a voice, somebody's voice, and they'd talk to me, and I'd write it down, as such. Noel Monahan, the actor, no relation, but a wonderful actor, was the adjudicator. He did dramatise this way back, and I'm open that Longford will do something with it, because it generally goes down, and it seemed to go down okay in Facebook last about 2 weeks ago. I read little bits, pieces from it. Diary of a Town. We're all waiting for something to happen. dividing time between waking and dreaming. Some lived in Ball Alley Road, Porter Row, Water Lane. You could say everyone was in the audience and no one on the stage. When I look back, shadows creep from nowhere, places and people come alive again. The strange look of the trees at night, the untaxed cars hiding in the backyards, old walls, by roads, the long and short division of fields, rainwater on the scrabbly road. There's a cold wind coming in from Loch Sheelan that sends a sea of grass up the hill, and from the hilltops, fields and houses move with the clouds. The Lady of the Rocks looks down on the town with her limestone smile. Slowly, night makes way for day. And I'll continue on another part here now. Mick Mulligan brings out bicycles and places them against the wall of his repair shop in Moxon Street. Widow Riley's only lovely daughter, Margaret Mary, tells to the Morning Star her tale of having to wear canary yellow stockings for her mother's sake. Dan Doyle beats the hell out of the ass up Dagger's Hill. Go on, you lazy fucker. Go on, you lazy fucker. Parks his cart by the roadside, ties the ass to a stump of a white-thorn bush, and leaves the ass and his fragile daughter, Bridgie, there all day, while he squanders the hours away with Jimmy Fay. Dan the Piper is going to a football match or coming home. Mary Verdon, number 3, Water Lane, comes to the door. I had a bleeding last night. Me varicose veins are raising, and gallstones are paining me and paining me. You're a living martyr, Mary. That's what everyone says. Mary Green shares the sweets of sin with Dirty Jimmy up against a wall. The poor priest can't make sense of them all. The bell rings, and Mary and Jimmy can't tell the din from the dog. And one will have to say. And then this one, 87, 90. You know, we talked about subconscious, today, the workshop, and how important subconscious is to writing. And, a lot of things happen in your sleep. And you sleep for almost 1/3 of your life, don't you? You can count your ages and divide by 3 and say, I've been asleep for this then. So dreaming is important, and subconscious is very important. Winking stars appear. Little windows to our souls in darkness. The town's voice whitens into the night. Inner voices of the people sing themselves in sleep. Their voices rise above the chorus of the day, above the crowd's mob and congregation. They sing alone in sleep. Mary Major screams internally. Someone is walking inside her heart, and she feels the thud of his boots in her blood. Mother Angela sprinkles children's tears about the playground. Bogon Tiernan, retired commercial traveller, rides the bicycle through the roads and byways of his dreams. Canon O'Kane, parish priest, carries everyone's cross up Main Street, up the hill, across a desert of ploughed land to a field of stones. Mike the barber looks into a big mirror and shears the dead faces of every man in town. Mary Verdon remembers her childhood and cries all night beside the turnip pulper in the shed. Mrs. Blaney writes messages to herself every day and reads them aloud in her sleep. Dear Mrs. Blaney, remember to leave the key under the mat just in case Mr. Blaney arrives unexpectedly from the grave. And report the scoundrels of children that knock and kick down your door to the master, the nuns, the priests and the guards. And don't forget to boil the potatoes and pay for the milk and the bread. And God willing, leave money for the priest in case you die in your bed. Yours truly, May Blaney. Okay. Before I finish, I just want to thank you again for your wonderful audience and to thank the committee for inviting me. I'll end with the funeral game. This poem was a lucky poem, really. It won a big prize and it was a big money prize at the time. As we all know, poets and writers, it's great to get the odd payment every now and then. You know, it makes you realise that maybe what you're saying is important. The funeral game, as children, we had television later, but we had to create our own play and our own notion of death, really, you know. So we buried little pets, and it was a winter when there was nothing else to do except imitate funerals, because we were morbid, you know. Okay, the funeral game. That winter, we came to terms with death. Every shoebox was a coffin for anything small and dead. And we wrapped them in calicos, velvets. We grabbed hats, coats, umbrellas from the hallway to dress as mourners. Someone struck an iron girder in the hay shed to sound the funeral bell. John beat the dead march on a saucepan. We held wakes, issued death certificates to old crows, kittens, chickens, lined the graves with stones, erected crosses with ash sticks. We pretended to cry, struggled with Latin prayers, filled the wet graves in the clover field, genuflected in the direction of a wind bush, the rain pelting down. We left by the side gap back to the hay shed for tea, bread, butter for all who travelled long journeys. Thank you very much.